Hey guys, and welcome to Faewood. If you haven't seen the first part of this set, then definitely go back and watch that, because this is a set of 5 frames that I'm making, and I give a bit of context of what my idea is about making these frames. This is definitely one that I wanted to make. Of all of the ones, I really wanted to have a 3-dimensional set of goblins staring out from one of these frames. If you guys are familiar with Brian Froud's work, you know that he loves to draw little collections of goblins or fairies huddled together basically, and it's a real hallmark of a lot of his work. And I just love the way this looks. You'll see it as well in the labyrinth. They have, you know, the goblins are there together sort of chatting, and it's very much like one of his artworks, which I think is great. So I'm basically using Kato clay. I've conditioned the clay, and I'm using olive oil because I love to use that for helping as a lubricant for sculpting. And I guess the idea with this, they're fun. These are fun faces. You don't have to be great at sculpting for this, because you can do whatever you like. It doesn't have to be anatomically correct, which is great for me. Who's not the strongest in sculpting. I am trying to learn and practice, but sculpting can be tricky. And I'm not very good at doing something that looks like an actual person. If you guys saw that fairy one where I was trying to sculpt a realistic fairy, she ended up a little bit wonk. So yeah, look, I'm not the best yet, but we're getting there. I think the main thing with sculpting is just working out where to remove clay and where to add. And I love the little ball tools that you can get for sculpting with clay. Those were great for this project because I could push down parts of the face where eye sockets would be, or, you know, maybe where I wanted it to dip in the cheeks or something like that. And then I could add elements, like add the eyeballs in, for example, and add the noses and the ears afterwards. Now, I definitely have used Brian Froud's work as inspiration for this, so I did have it open so I could have a look and create a lot of the same faces from the picture that I had there. But I also added my own ones as well, so, you know, have a bit of fun with it. Maybe you want to add yourself in there as a goblin, or, you know, maybe you want to mix and match some goblins in there. I think the thing with making a face look like a goblin face is to completely exaggerate the features. So pick a feature and just totally exaggerate it. And then they have that hallmark of the large ears as well, large pointed ears. So that always helps as well to give that goblin look. Well guys, I've done all of that work, and unfortunately, because these plastic frames are that like they can melt, it did melt a little bit. Now I thought it would be okay because the last one I did, it was fine. I kept an eye on it and it was okay, and this time I was not so lucky, and the back of it kind of melted and it deformed, so the insert part came out and it cracked a whole bunch of different elements. I am really hoping that I can somehow piece this back together, but we'll have to see. Wish me luck. If I sound deflated in that last clip, I definitely was. I was so sure I'd wrecked this, but I used some super glue and I used some epoxy sculpt, and we managed to get it back together.
Listen.
Well, I managed to fix this up, thank goodness. So it's looking a lot better. I've put a coat of paint on some of it to just get a look of what it's going to be like. But then I do want to just create something up here where I had some melting of the frame. So I might just create a little goblin hanging over it or something like that. It's just to hide the sins, as Adam Savage would say. I'm going to use epoxy sculpt again for that because I don't have to bake it, and then I'll have to wait for that to dry before I can continue with the painting and everything. The beauty of this epoxy sculpt is that when you get stuck in situations like mine where putting something in the oven is not a great idea, you can use this clay and it sets super rock hard. It does have a short working time. I mean, you've got a couple of hours probably, and it starts to slowly harden over that time. But yeah, it was a godsend in this circumstance. Now, I did mention I'm not very good at sculpting, and by God, making tiny little hands was so hard. And they were sort of just passable, I'd say, but I don't know. I didn't want to spend forever on this project either, and I knew it was already going to take me a really long time because I had all of those frames, so I weighed up where I wanted to spend time putting in the detail. And for my purposes, I was happy enough with the hands just looking okay. So same thing as the other frame in my previous video, I used a wash and then a lot of dry brushing. The dry brushing, as I mentioned in the other video, it just gives a softer look, you know, it gives a more blended, soft focus look, and that's kind of where I was going with these. I wanted them to look quite aged, and you know, I sort of wanted them to look a little bit like the sketches, which Brian Froud's artwork, I always find there's a looseness about it, which I really love, and that's, I think, why I like his work, as opposed to maybe some other, say, sci-fi artists or such that might be a bit more crisp and things. That's definitely up some people's alley, but I love the looseness of his work. Now for this one, I did toss up whether I wanted to put some fairies in there, but I felt like it would take a long time to kind of get the look I was after if I was doing fairies. And again, the project itself in its entirety was quite large, so I scaled it back and thought instead I'll make some little fairy mushrooms. Now this was done in parts. If you've watched me make the other mushrooms, that was again techniques that I've learnt from another YouTube channel, which the name escapes me right now, but I'll try and link it. And it really helped me to realize that I could make polymer clay things in parts. I always thought before that I had to create something in its entirety and then fire it. I didn't realize you could do multiple firings of polymer clay. So to do the stem and the top of the mushroom first, and then to put its little gills on underneath and the little spots, it is so much better because you're not then you know, malforming your already sculpted mushroom shape. So I definitely recommend checking out her channel. Again, I'll link it because the name escapes me right now, but those techniques have helped me immensely. bringing the lace into this one as well with a little butterfly. And then I did learn my lesson from the other one, and I fired those mushrooms not in the frame because once bitten, twice shy. I was not going to risk it, but I wanted some things sculpted onto the actual frame, so that's again where the epoxy sculpt was awesome, because I could do that and not worry about having to fire it. So acrylic paint again for this one. It was tough to get into the little nooks and crannies, so it'll start out looking messy at first because you just really have to try and get that paint in where you need it. This also did need a number of coats to build things up for certain things. Red I find can be tricky to get a nice opaque colour, so sometimes I end up having to go in with a slightly pink colour, so that it's adding some opacity. Having the white in there for some reason with red helps you build up opacity, and then you might be able to go in on top of that pink with some more red. So this started out quite vibrant in colour. I was really trying to just start to build up those colours. I knew I was going to muddy this up afterwards. And look, you can stop at whatever point you like, because I know that the style that I'm going for here might not be everyone's cup of tea, because, you know, I'm painting it to look quite nice at first and then I go and muddy it all up. But I really wanted that look. I didn't want it to look perfect. I wanted it to look really old and blended in. So you'll see at the end what I do here. So yeah, I was really having trouble getting that red built up, so I did go in with a very pink base colour and added the red after, and that seemed to finally get the opacity I was after. Otherwise it was looking very streaky. Now, I'll be honest, I do like the way this looks here without muddying it up a bit, but it just did not go with the rest of the pieces. It needed that more aging to it, so that's why I did go in with a black wash afterwards. Again, you don't have to do that if you want more of a pretty looking picture instead of a really aged one, but I was really playing around with making this look old and ancient. But I did want to go in afterwards with a bit more colour, because it did get a lot muddied up and some of the detail was lost, so I did bring some of that back in. So this is the finished set. I'm really happy with how this project came out. It took quite a while to do. Surprisingly didn't take that much clay because of how flat these images are, and it was 3 of the 5 that were sculpted. But yeah, really happy. I had to hang them really high on my ceiling though, so if they look quite angled, it's because they are. I don't have a lot of wall space, and the wall space I do have for hanging is right up at the top, so that's a bit of a downside, I guess, because you don't get to see all the detail in them, but I still love them, and I do really like them in that little nook up there too. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Subscribe if you want to see more from me, and I'll see the rest of you next time in Faewood. Bye guys.